Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello, and thanks for tuning in. Before we get to the interview today, I want you to know that there are still a handful of spots left for the next round of Level Up Your Life, my Healthy Habits Bootcamp course that starts January 21st. So if 2020 is your year to finally do the thing, that thing that your inner wisdom has been telling you to pay attention to, but that you've been conveniently ignoring because society is rewarding you to do other things for other people, this is a great opportunity to get off your plateau, to stop feeling meh, to regain a deep sense of vitality and purpose that starts with going back to some pretty unsexy basics of taking care of yourself. So if you're ready to show up differently in the world, stop waiting for the stars to align because they're never going to, and just decide that this is the year that you're going to focus on prioritizing you and some aspect of your health, whether that's starting a meditation practice or an exercise program or eating differently, getting enough sleep, drawing some boundaries, spending time doing what is most important to you. This is an opportunity for you to work with me in a small group setting, to get weekly coaching, and to hang out with other really smart, self-aware, caring, and evolving people. If you're thinking to yourself, I'll catch the next round, this is fair warning that I have no idea when that's going to be. And while the early bird deadline has passed, you, my beloved podcast listeners, are in luck, because if you apply before the clock runs out on 2019, you can still save a few $100 on your tuition if you mention that on your application. So take yourself seriously, people. I would love to work with you. Go to brodywelch.com, go to the Work With Me section, and under that section, you'll find the Level Up page. Read about it. If it resonates, apply to join. And then we hop on a call together and make sure that it's a good fit. One thing that people have been asking me is it a ton of information or a ton of work? And the answer to that is no. The focus in Level Up is really on implementation, on bridging the gap between what you know you need to do to take care of yourself and actually doing it. So it's basically like the commitment is a coaching call on a weekly basis, and you get a ton of content that you can go through on your own time and download for the rest of your life. But the focus is really on just starting where you are and taking some small doable steps in the direction of better until it's second nature. And that's how you level up. So if you're intrigued, head to brodywelch.com, Brody with an IE, Welch with a CH, Level Up page, and apply. Okay, and now on to today's interview on panic attacks and anxiety with Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum. Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a Chinese medicine expert and transformation catalyst. And today, my guest is Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum. And we're going to be talking about anxiety and panic attacks, negative self-talk, and more. Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum has spent nearly 5 decades making healthcare and education more holistic and innovative. With a Ph.D. in clinical psychology, Dr. Sandi specialized in positive psychology, cognitive behavior therapy, and mind-body medicine, and served as a teacher and director of a clinic for attention deficit disorders. She is a pioneer in her field, having implemented programs such as the use of neurofeedback with patients and becoming the first ever psychologist to earn certification through the Institute for Functional Medicine, the IFM. And she is the founder of the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy in Chicago. I am super excited to have Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum here with me on the show because of her innovative approach, and also because, first of all, she's going to enlighten us a little bit about the connection between how to stop a panic attack, sources of anxiety, what we can do about our negative self-talk, but also what we might be able to do together, working in groups, and the role of health coaches on this journey. Dr. Sandi, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thank you so much, Brody. I'm excited to be here.
We've been talking a lot about anxiety on the show, and along with things like perfectionism and that sort of this sense of that anything that threatens who we think we need to be in the world as increasing our stress. And so we have had a couple of conversations recently on the show that deal with kind of the source of stress and anxiety. But I want to start with you today on the acute manifestation of anxiety that is commonly known as a panic attack. And first of all, if you could walk us through what characterizes a true panic attack versus just feeling anxious.
It's a matter of degree. So it's the most heightened state of anxiety that is possible. And so the common anxiety, if someone's worrying, let's say you're fretting about something, and maybe you're a little tense, your muscles are tight, and breathing could be altered. Maybe you're having difficulty sleeping. And primarily it's in your thoughts where you're really just ruminating, you're worried, maybe you're afraid. That's a type of anxiety. There's social anxiety. But what distinguishes a panic attack or a panic episode is this really heightened, you are at the extreme end of this fight or flight alarm response. What's happening during that time? Well, to put it simply, you might think you're going to die. It feels like you can't breathe. It feels like you are going to pass out. It may take different forms, but it is a true physiological response that is very heightened. And I know this so well because I had panic attacks when I was in my 20s and I thought I was dying. I thought I had to, in fact, I did, to go to an emergency room. And because I thought there was something that was seriously wrong, like I was having a heart attack and I was going to die. So that's what distinguishes a panic attack. But the good news is that you don't have to suffer from panic attacks. They are relatively easy to control once you understand and start practicing how to stop them.
Right. Because if you're just, I mean, obviously those symptoms can be really scary. And the idea that that fear can beget more fear as opposed to thinking about, being in your fully present conscious mind, which is different than being in a fear state. So if we can recognize that that's what's happening, what would be a good first step as far as getting out of that state?
Sure. So it's stages. So, what typically happens, somebody is experiencing these symptoms and they don't know what's going on. And that was what happened to me. I thought there was something seriously wrong. I thought I had a heart condition. I thought that there was something the matter. And so, typically, the typical panic sufferer will go from doctor to doctor, and they may see a cardiologist. They may see, first they start out with their internist. They may see a psychiatrist finally, and they're told you have a panic disorder. You've been diagnosed. Okay, what happens then? It's well-meaning, but now you have a label. And I just did it. I called to myself, I'm a panic sufferer. That's what I used to say to myself years ago. And so now you are in this category. And what happens then is you start to really live that life. And what's so easy to slip into is an overlay where you're fearing fear. So you start to avoid going places. Okay, I'm not going to go to this particular location because the last time I went there, I didn't feel good. I had a panic attack. And what if that happens again? So I can't go to a theater or a sports arena and sit in a place where I can't easily get out. And so you start to sit and find the exit, for example. So now you're fearing fear. An extreme example of that would be agoraphobia, where you are not going out of the house because you are so afraid of that fear response. So then comes the education part of it, where you start to really understand that this is a false alarm and it's your body acting intelligently. And the best way that I had of describing it when I was in practice as a clinical psychologist, and I saw hundreds of people with panic attacks. And so I gave them this example. You imagine that you're driving down the street, you get to where you live, and it's pitch black. There's no lights on for some reason, but you step out of the car and you step down on something and it's a snake. So imagine how you feel at that moment, okay? You're going to be, your heart's pounding, every system of the body reacts because your body perceives danger, and it's like an alarm response going off. But now let's say you open the car door a little bit more and there's a light activated. So you look down and there's a garden hose, not a snake. And so you may think, oh, wasn't that stupid? I reacted that way. And so you start to come down from that really heightened response. And it takes a long time. But the essence of shifting and controlling these symptoms of a panic attack is to turn snakes into garden hoses. And everything that we process, it's because it wasn't a real snake. It was a garden hose all along. So, what was responsible for triggering that major physiological reaction? It was the word snake. It was that thought. It's a split second because it's like a reflex. And when you understand that, it's just a matter, I scared myself, and now it's a matter of how you calm down and quiet yourself. So it's like we are wired, we have a home alarm system built in to keep us safe. But when we have false alarms, then the body doesn't interpret that it's a false alarm. It thinks it's a snake. And so it triggers this whole cascade of physiological reactions. So step by step, you start to pull back from it.
So the first step, it sounds like you're saying, is recognize that there is no snake. that
Yes,
that
exactly.
there
Yep.
is that okay, this is the alarm is sounding, but I'm okay. And then what do we do?
Yeah. Well, so it's a step by step process, but the first step is to start to tell yourself it's just panic, and you imagine that soon, and you start to say that self talk, soon I'm going to feel better. Soon my heart will stop pounding. Soon my breathing will regulate, and you can start to intervene to make that happen. So, what happens when you're in a panic attack? Well, you need to get air as quickly as possible, so you take a chest breath. Or you're like a deer in headlights and you're not breathing at all. Or the typical hyperventilation pattern, which is very common. This is what I was doing when I had panic attacks. So you inhale, but you think, I can't get enough air. I'm not breathing. I'm going to pass out. So what do? You inhale, but you don't take the time to fully exhale because you're thinking, I need to take another breath. It's like gasping for air. So you're not exhaling fully, and therefore you reach a state where you are oversaturated with too much oxygen. You're hyperventilating, which is why when I would go to the emergency room thinking I was dying from this panic attack, which I thought was a heart attack, they would have me breathe into a paper bag. And that's a common practice in emergency rooms for people who are panicky, so that you can start to change that balance of oxygen to,
So remembering to exhale
yes,
fully,
exhale.
breathing
Yes,
out. And
yes,
I love what you said too, just trusting that just because this is what it feels like now does not mean that this is what is always going to be, that my
yes,
body knows how to self-regulate. I know
yes,
how to calm down.
yep,
I don't actually have to force myself to calm
yeah,
down because that will
exactly.
happen. But at the same time, if I'm inclined to steer myself in that direction, it's going to start with exhaling at least as much as we're inhaling, right? That sort of
Exactly. Yep,
ratcheting
yep.
down the nervous system out of that
Yeah,
fight or flight mode.
totally. Yep. And there's some other tricks with breathing. So
Mhm.
what happens is we tend to be impatient. We're in a hurry. Oh, this better work. And so let's say you're starting to exhale, but you're not doing slow breathing. And so you want to force yourself, slow it down because your thoughts are racing. You're scaring yourself. Everything is firing at a real fast speed. So you want to control that by going into slow motion breathing. So it's like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, and as you inhale, and then the same as you exhale, and then you elongate the exhalation. What's happening there is as you're slowing the breath, typically you're going to start slowing your thoughts. The thoughts that were, I'm dying. This is horrible. I can't stand this. I'm going to pass out. I can't take these feelings. This is awful. And so you start to shift to more realistic thinking. And a big part of that realistic thinking is realizing The patience is so important here with this process. Why is that? Because think about an alarm system. Let's say there's a true emergency and you activate your home alarm or the fire. They have to get out there immediately. So it's an immediate response. But let's assume that, let's say it's a false alarm. And if you remember when you were in school and you had a fire drill and maybe it was a false alarm, and you now have all the emergency vehicles that have been called out, and they're not going to just say, oh, okay, false alarm, we're leaving. They're going to go through every room slowly to make sure that there's no real danger. And that's what's happening physiologically.
When people are prone to panic attacks, you're saying that basically that this is one extreme end of the spectrum, but it probably doesn't come out of nowhere. Probably people are dealing with some level of anxiety in their daily lives. Would you agree with that?
Exactly.
So I've heard from people that they sometimes get panic attacks like in situations that don't seem stressful to them overtly. Like they could just be doing something that feels like normal life and that nothing particularly stressful is happening, but then a panic attack will come on. Is this common?
Totally. So sometimes it's people will say, oh, I was in a grocery store and I was just walking down the aisle and I wasn't thinking about anything and it just came on out of the blue. But what would happen is when we would dig deeper, we would find that it's that thought. There might be a split second, like, oh, I'm feeling good. I wonder if that will last. And it's that split second, and it's just a little bit. It could start like with just a very short period of time where you have a thought that's negative. And it might be like, what if I'm feeling good now, but what if that doesn't last? And what if I start to have a panic attack later on? So it's often starting with your self-talk. And it's very, very fast. And sometimes we don't see the association. So it's typically not out of nowhere, but there can be triggers. So, for example, we know that if you're eating a lot of sugar. So when I was getting those panic attacks in my 20s, my diet was horrible. I was binging on sugar. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't physically fit. So of course I was going to be more prone to panic attack. So we want to look at there are ways that through changing what we're eating or making sure that we have things built in through the day that are bringing us joy, we're going to become more adapted, more robust, so that we're less likely to have a panic attack.
I'd love to get into a little even more granular about the functional medicine options as opposed, because if people are suffering from panic attacks or anxiety and they go to a typical Western doctor, they're going to get drugs, right? Or therapy, like those are going to be the two things that are recommended first. And functional medicine, as well as those of us who practice Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or health coaches from either of those schools of thought, would have some different ideas. What do you
Totally.
usually start with people?
Yeah, so I always focused on an integrative. It's not just one approach, one strategy, but you pull it all together. So you take functional medicine methodologies and teachings, which is really a way of understanding that we're all connected. So, for example, the difference between going to say a conventional provider, they're going to try, okay, I'm going to diagnose you with panic disorder. Now you've got that label, which in itself puts you in a category and can then distort how you're thinking because you now see yourself as this panic sufferer.
So that identity, like you would reject that identity
Totally.
that I am now someone with a disease or a condition and like
Yes.
that. And so
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
thinking of yourself as someone who has experienced a panic attack in the past.
Totally. So
Cool. Yeah.
Um,
So
oh,
really important identity reframe.
crucial. It is as crucial for this process so that you don't see yourself that because just thinking that, just saying that those words is going to trigger a level of anxiety. And so instead, what I would say is that, well, you have some bad habits. You have a habit of really scaring yourself and having an altered breathing pattern. And then that is connected in functional medicine way of thinking, well, that maybe you had a childhood where maybe you were cesarean birth and maybe you were bottle fed and maybe you had a lot of antibiotics and that's done some real bad things with your microbiome and your gut. And that's connected to the ability to make neurotransmitters. And so that has affected how you process information. So this connection between the brain and the gut, once you understand that, well, when I heal my gut, when I eat certain foods, that may be more conducive to a relaxation effect. And then we would look at other things. There are certain nutrients, and people who are missing those nutrients would be more susceptible to anxiety. So looking at that as well as looking at things like sleep and what you do for restoration, how much joy is in your life, what's meaning and purpose. And I always focused on the power of imagination. And so you start to imagine feeling calm, start to really pretend, even if you're not experiencing that time. And another thing that I would say to people if they're, oh, I can't stand it to have a panic attack, you would say, good, bring it on. It's a great opportunity to practice shifting to a calm state.
Great. I appreciate that. Is there a particular nutrient deficiency that you see that stands out?
Well, there's a number of them, and so we have to look at your B vitamin status, for example, and it is often the what you're lacking. So there are people who are really skilled in the area of nutrition to do that full panel, but sometimes it's as simple as looking at this balance of like what you're putting in, like, so what is how much sugar, particularly processed foods, and a lot of the chemicals that are in processed foods, and so that can really be triggers for being more prone. So they're risk factors. But the main thing, and I just want to keep reiterating this, it has to do with scaring yourself. You are seeing snakes instead of garden hoses. And so that would be the main thing, because it is possible if you're anxiety prone to panic, you may start micromanaging things like your vitamin status or what you're eating. And that in itself can lead to anxiety and even panic, like, oh no, I ate this and I'm going to have a bad reaction to it. So it really is focused on how you think. And the good news, though, is that the more you practice calming yourself, new neural pathways are formed. And so the relaxation process becomes easier and easier.
This episode is brought to you by Level Up Your Life, my self-care support group or boot camp for creating the habits that we all need to thrive. But don't take my word for it. Here's what real-life Level Up graduates have to say.
The Level Up course truly transformed my life. I'm healthier, happier, more alive, and I love this new me.
Anyone struggling to put their needs first would benefit from working with Brody. Her coaching style is adaptive, from gentle support to calling you out when necessary.
Doing this work of habit change with a supportive coach and a network of allies allowed the foundation of my daily habits to automate. I'm now free to move through the world with greater ease and to focus my energy on what matters most.
If you're looking for a supportive group that fosters self-compassion as one of the utmost practices so that you can realize the transformations you're looking for in your body and your mind and your spirit, with a mentor and a guide who not only has a wicked amount of knowledge, but it is applied and she intimately shares from her own personal experiences of transformation, and you want to just be loved, come on in.
You can get in on this too. Head to brodywelch.com, go to the Level Up page, and apply to join our next round, which launches in January 2020. I love that you're emphasizing that basically that these things may not be easy at first to calm ourselves down or to be in the habit of recognizing that things don't have to be perfect and that we can soften into allowing the world to be as it is. But a lot of times when I'm working with clients and they are daunted by the idea of working on a practice of mindfulness or working on even just developing that awareness that's the lens that they're looking through, that the idea of, for example, meditating, sitting with eyes closed can be scary and anxiety producing in and of itself. And I'm wondering if you have like a particular, for people who are prone to anxiety, is there a particular mind body technique that you find is especially effective for that group of people?
Yes, distraction, laughter. So if somebody is very anxious and particularly with panic, to start and say, go learn meditation and go to a meditation class, that in itself can trigger anxiety because their mind's racing. And so they may be thinking, oh no, my heart's like, when you are in that situation where it's very quiet on the outside, let's say complete stillness in the room, maybe you are hearing your heart pounding and you're focusing on that. Or you're focusing on your breathing and, oh, I'm having a little difficulty breathing. Oh no, what if I start to feel bad? What if I disturb everybody in this room? What if I have to run out? And so now it's elevating more and more. And you could even be in a full blown panic. And I've seen that happen. Instead, the power of distraction is huge. So years ago, I had this woman I would work with. She was an elderly woman, had severe panic. And she would call me up and she'd say, oh, Sandi, I got to go to the emergency room. I have panic. I'm not going to make it. This is it. I'm feeling so awful. And I would say to her, Seal, what closet do you want to clean out? Or find a drawer. And okay, she'd tell me which one. Okay, I'm going to go down in the basement. I'm going to tackle that drawer. She lived in a home for many, many years. So she had a lot of drawers and closets to clean out. And then she'd call me back an hour later. She said, oh my gosh, I got so involved in the things I was seeing in that closet and bringing back good memories. And I'm feeling fine now. Why? Because
right. She got out of her,
yes.
like it was a little disrupt of what was going on in her mind.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was an active process. It was things that could pull her focus away, because it goes back to that sorting principle with snakes, garden hoses. Everything we think about, everything is sorted into two piles: danger, safety. The danger can be at a very low level or extreme danger. I'm dying. There's a snake. I'm in mortal danger. But it can be lower level too. So a neutral thought, something that's going to pull our focus in that direction. Now our thoughts are focused on something like not away from the body. And that's why going into a meditation may not always be the best approach, at least initially. It's getting people out. And it has to be something that is active. It's not like, oh, go turn on the TV or go read a book, because you're going to be reading, but you're not focusing on the words. You're not paying attention to what's on that TV show. But instead, like somebody I'd worked with who liked to cook, okay, go pull out Julia Child, something that you really have to pay attention step by step to prepare that recipe.
In a sense, it's not classical or like that. It is a deliberate direction of your focus into something that is going to be as absorbing as possible.
Yes. And at the same time, it's that you're saying to yourself, okay, right now my heart's racing. I'm feeling a little dizzy. I'm not feeling great, but I know the body, it's just a false alarm. The body is acting intelligently. It's trying to keep me safe, but there's no danger. And soon I will feel better after whatever it is, after I clean out this closet, after I prepare this meal, after I call somebody and we have a great conversation, then I know that slowly I'm going to feel better, because remember, the body relaxes slowly and gets triggered quickly,
Right.
like a
There is
reflex.
no off switch for adrenaline. It just has to
Totally,
wear off. And at
totally.
the same time, it's pretty expensive to be then coming up with all of the other counterbalancing chemicals that we need in the body. But one of those I've heard you allude to a couple of times now is oxytocin, right? That idea of connecting with other people, that idea of doing
Yeah,
something that makes us feel like we are, that makes us feel joy and bonded and connected, and that can be a super useful thing. So, on the one hand, you've given us some great tips on how to ratchet down from an acute episode of panic. And yet, it seems like to treat the root of anxiety, that just staying busy is actually allowing the problem to perpetuate, at least from my Chinese medicine perspective, that anxiety is often heat in the heart. It's too much agitation, it's too much stimulation, or we're putting too much pressure on ourselves to achieve or to meet other people's needs or whatever it is, that there's an intensity about it, a yang energy about it, a heat about it. And that the antidote for that is often leaving space. It's having time and space to digest our lives and to really look critically at what we're buying into, like to really get to the root. And I'm curious, does that line up with what you would have people do?
absolutely. Because there's the theory from Gestalt work, when you accept what is, you change. And so it starts by accepting, yes, I am somebody who tends to scare myself a lot and tends to worry. And I can practice and there's a way that the body is so intelligent that I can let that go. But accepting, because that is really the key, that panic isn't, it doesn't have to be scary, anxiety doesn't have to be scary. But what happens, how this develops, so we often get messages starting when we're really little, and people are described in a certain way. Oh, I used to think I come from a whole long line of worriers.
Oh
My
my gosh, I had
warrior,
this I
so
I can hear my mother saying the same thing,
yeah,
which means I do too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so my mother's a worrier, my grandmother, and it's just in our culture. We tend to be worriers, and so now
Right.
I'm a worrier.
Right. It's just
And
how
that,
we roll in this family. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Without thinking that, this is actually, as an aside, I just did a genomic profile and find that, yeah, I do have that genetic tendency to be a
Mhm.
worrier,
Mhm.
and it fits. However, there's also epigenetics that we can change. Our genes are not our destiny, and so with practice, we can create a new way of being. And so we don't have to accept that. And I think it also, some people will spend their lives in psychotherapy looking at for there must be some deep trauma or cause this. But really, when we look in functional medicine at a timeline, yeah, there may be an event that was the trigger, but it's complicated because it's not just often one, but there are a whole series of events that could be physical, it could be environmental, it could be based on some true trauma that we had. But it's something, for example, I lost my father when I was 9, and I always thought that was somehow connected to panic attacks. But really, when I looked back and dug deeper, it had to do with when I was about 3, 4 in those days, talking early 50s, and doctors would make home visits. And I remember once I was sick, and this doctor came over and listened to my heart, and still remember this so vividly. He told my mother she has a heart murmur. And so I grew up thinking like I was damaged in terms of a heart condition. And so that was actually when was having panic attacks, it was connected to, I always felt like chest pain. And oh, now I've got pain radiating down my left arm. Okay, I have a heart attack. I'm having a heart attack. This is it. And so it really was connected to some of those early messages. And when we're little, we don't cognitively have the ability to sort that out and say, oh, wait a minute, that's not quite true. We swallow things whole and we believe
Yes,
them.
including a lot of those really damaging things that can become part of our fixed mindset,
Yep.
right? Like we were talking about, just that idea that, oh, well, this is just how my genetics is. Like I have nothing to do with this. When in fact, we actually flip on and off our DNA all the time with our daily lifestyle and diet choices and how we're living. And so we actually really have much more ability to steer than we might think, which I think is it's one of the things that that I think is super important about working with either a coach or a counselor or someone who recognizes, who can help you remember that you don't actually have to accept the box or the diagnosis or a sense of it, a sense of an unchanging self.
Absolutely. That is so true.
I want to get into, we were talking before pressing record that you have a long history of working with groups. And I would love to just hear your thinking behind the benefits of group medical visits or having people who are all going through a similar thing in the same place at the same time. Because I've noticed I love working with my Level Up coaching group or my Inner Alchemy members on personal development, because there really is something to just that what I was hearing for years from people is that they felt like they were the only one, like, why can everyone else eat whatever they want and I can't? Or like, why am I the only one who feels so alone or stressed or everything? And I'm thinking, wow, I have the benefit of seeing all these people individually in clinic, but there's so many commonalities, and that being able to bring people together and to see how much faster people progress when they can see each other as going through the same thing, to be inspired by each other, to have each other as mirrors. But I'd love to hear your experience, how you got into it, and what you notice in terms of the what you notice as the benefits of group work.
I love this topic because groups are community, and community is the best medicine. And when you get a group of people together, this is so powerful, much more powerful than meeting one on one, let's say, with a medical doctor, practitioner, or even a coach, because groups have greater potential to offer hope. And there's something that is so wonderful about being with a group of people to see, hey, I'm not alone. That because often people who are having, particularly with panic or anxiety, they think they're crazy. They think there's something seriously wrong, that they'll say, I'm having a nervous breakdown. Because they've been to so many doctors, there's nothing physically wrong with them. So then the last resort is, I'm nuts, having a nervous breakdown. And people may even have told them that. So in not so many words, but that's what they're implying. And so it's really affirming that there is hope, and they get suggestions. But this is what I think is probably the greatest potential. It gives people meaning and purpose. And I've run a lot of groups, and I used to run groups for panic and anxiety in the 90s. And people would come together, and there's a wonderful story that really just sums up the power of groups. That's really the secret sauce of group work. And that is, imagine that there's a group of people sitting around a table, and there's a pot of stew or something in the center, a big bowl, and they have long wooden spoons. And they're trying to get they're starving, and they're trying to reach in and get that food on their spoon, and they can't do it. And so it's in front of them, all this big, great bowl of wonderful food, but they can't reach it. Now imagine a different scene. A group of people are sitting in this big round table, and in the center there's a group. The food is out there, and they have spoons, but now they are well nourished, and they're happy, and they're laughing. And what was the difference? Because instead of trying to feed themselves with their long wooden spoon, they're feeding each other. So that is the essence of the power of group. And that is the ability to offer help, to be there for somebody else. And that's when we often find meaning and purpose. And it's that connection to somebody else. I can be of value. Maybe I have a trick up my sleeve for dealing with panic, and I can share that with the group. So now I'm offering value, and many of these people will feel undervalued. They feel like, they're the patient. They have nothing to offer.
Right.
And they're seeing the doctor or the group facilitator as the one, but not so. In a group, it's peer to peer, supporting each other.
Yeah, it's so powerful because I know that especially for women, like with the tend and befriend response, our ability to check out how are you doing? Are you okay? That even if we're all stressed out, that's part of how we heal. That's part of how we calm down. And that idea of being able to contribute to other people's lives is something that all of us have, regardless of how broken or dysfunctional we might think we are. And a lot of times having the fact that our presence and our ideas and our good intentions realized and seen and heard and validated by other people in a dynamic group, it is reinforcing of this identity that we are not actually all that dysfunctional and sick and broken.
Yeah, exactly. I remember groups that I ran, and people would get so excited when they have a newcomer into the group, and because they would say, "Oh, you might be feeling, very panicky, or you're not feeling well, or you're having trouble right now." But we felt that way when we started, and now things have changed so much. So this is great that you're here, and we're here to support you. And that was just so affirming for not only the new person, but for people who were now in that role of offering support.
So you've been doing this group thing for a while, and now you train health coaches.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that transition.
Yeah. So at 65, I started Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, and it was a collaboration with the Institute for Functional Medicine. So it really is incredible to see the growth of health coaching. And this is catching on very rapidly by the whole medical community. And so we are seeing a shift from the doctor as the do it all as the expert, but coaching is really about being somebody's personal cheerleader, helping them change when change is hard. And coaches are listeners, and they support people in reaching whatever goals they want to reach. And so it's a really, again, rapidly exploding profession. And we train our coaches in a lot of what I was just describing here, where we're integrating mind body medicine with positive psychologies, where you look at what you need to thrive, what's right with you and not what's wrong with you, and then integrating that with these key functional medicine principles so that people can lead better lives.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to get that there is a difference between coaching and therapy, and there's a difference between coaching and being a practitioner, but that coaching fills this role that really can help with the implementation. Like
Exactly.
that it can not only give you the support that you need to make change, but strategy. That a lot of times that there is it's just so much more easy and efficient to get where you want to go with a guide who knows the way and has been there before and can cheer you on and who can hold space for a community of people who are doing a similar thing and going in a similar direction. I know that just personally, my experience as being a health coach is it's different than being in clinic, right? That in clinic, I prescribe things and people, it's still kind of this practitioner as healer model, as opposed to the coaching model where the person is healing themselves and they're getting the information that they need to do that from their coach. They're getting the support, the accountability, the strategy, and the camaraderie from other people in the group. And it really is, it can be so vital for people to really take back ownership for being at the center of their own lives and at the center of their own healing journey.
Absolutely. And that was so well put, because a coach is not the expert. A coach is somebody who is really there to listen, to be with you, to often to hold you accountable, but it's your goals. And so it's really a process of being with somebody and offering mindfulness, hope, compassion. So many people think I need to have a background in healthcare to be a health coach, and that's not necessarily true. Some of the best coaches are career changers, or they're doing this on the side. They're continuing their current profession, but they are also blending that with coaching.
And if people are interested in maybe checking out what health coaching programs are with you are like, where would you suggest they go?
So our website is functionalmedicinecoaching.org. It's an online program. We have students come to us from all over the world, and it's taught by senior faculty from the Institute for Functional Medicine, paired with faculty who are experts in positive psychology, psychology of eating, mind-body medicine.
Wonderful. Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum, thank you so much for being such a wonderful and informative guest and helping us calm down and stop panicking.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks, Brody.
Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.